I was talking to my grandma about a few days before the new year, and she said that she can't wait for 2021 to come. And I was like, why? Uh, why is it? Why does it make any difference? And she said that 2020 was the worst year of her life. And I was like, damn, because 2020 was one of the best years in my life. So I wanted to make a video to dive a little bit deeper into why some people thrived in 2020 and why others had the worst year of their lives, and how to then, with that information, crush it in the 2021. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing so you don't miss other content like this that I'll be making in the future. And without further ado, let's hop into this video. So let's dive a little bit deeper why into why people didn't like the pandemic. We were very lucky actually with this pandemic because the mortality rate was extremely low and is extremely low. And we had a pretty decent economic system where it didn't all collapse just by us having to be all in the lockdown. So the system survived because, like I said, the pandemic wasn't such a big thing. But why then all the suffering? As it turns out, all the suffering is created by ego, and the ego felt threatened during the 2020. The ego needs this sense of security. So during this pandemic, there was this sense of um, fear all around the media, and of course, then you lose this security and you feel anxiety all the time. Well, that is obvious, but what about um, loneliness? Because first time in a long while, people were disconnected from each other. You could only go to the store and maybe hang out with your family. So of course that loneliness became a very big issue. What is loneliness? Loneliness is attachment to people. You're emotionally attached to hanging out with people. What does that mean? It means that you need people to feel good, to feel at ease, to feel peaceful. You're not at peace when being by yourself. So the pandemic actually didn't create problems. It just showed us the problems which were already here. You were already unable to be at peace by yourself before the pandemic. The ego also had control of you and your emotions before the pandemic. So when the pandemic happened, it just showed itself. You were building this house of cards during your whole life, and the corona outbreak was just the wind blowing away your whole house. So the problem wasn't in the outbreak and the pandemic, the problem was that you don't have control over your emotions. You don't have, I mean, most people don't have this emotional intelligence, I would say, to be able to analyze your emotions and thoughts, to then see that they don't have to take control of you. You can still have fear and you can still be lonely, but you're not consumed by that. You don't suffer from these emotions because what are emotions? Emotions are just informations. Then your ego interprets in emotions and says these emotions are bad and these emotions are good, and we want more of these emotions and want less of these emotions. And when you create this system of what is good, what is bad, of course you suffer because eventually the bad emotions do come up. You can't control the outside world, but you have complete control, or maybe better put, complete responsibility of control for the inside system. So whatever happens outside of you, you you can manipulate it to an extent, but what happens inside of you is completely in your ability to control it. So if you suffer, that's all on you basically. That has nothing to do with the pandemic or the outside situation like economics or who is the president or the war, maybe even. If you want to finally take control of your life and your emotions, you need to build this resilience. You need to build true foundation. You when you build house of cards, you're susceptible to any wind, and you must believe that the wind will come, and it does come. Like, we are very lucky to, if probably if you're watching this, you're all, as well as I am, lucky to not have witnessed any wars yet. And history tells us that wars do happen all the time, and that economic crises happen all the time. The virus, for example, does happen. There are all these things that can happen, but we take things for granted. And if you don't have control over yourself, then of course you will suffer eventually. If 2020 sucked for you, then be conscious enough to notice that it was all because of the ego. The ego creates all the problems. The body doesn't have problems. It just gets information from the outside world, and then the ego interprets informations and emotions as good or bad depending on which fits the ego. So what is the solution? How to crush it then in 2021? Well, first you need to let go of control. You can't control the outside world. And who knows, maybe things will go back into their own old patterns, or maybe something much worse will happen, or maybe it will stay the same, who knows. But what is in your control is to build some emotional intelligence by observing what happens inside of you, and you can say meditating. Meditation is basically observing your thoughts, so it gives you more clear view on the ego. It sheds light on the ego and the thoughts, so you lose all the suffering basically. Take responsibility for your own suffering and your own well-being, because it is completely your responsibility. Stop taking your life so seriously. When you take your life seriously, you are destined to suffer, because you don't have control over your life. Shit always happens. That's life. So you need to see that you don't have control, and that you can just enjoy the ride. If you're not meditating, then you're leaving huge chances to the outside world, because meditation can greatly improve your inner world. It could greatly impact your emotional stability and control over your emotions, so they don't control you. And if you're smart, then you you will notice that this is a wake up call. The odds are you didn't lose your job, and yeah, the coronavirus didn't kill you. So you were left unharmed from the outbreak and the pandemic. And there are lessons to be learned. The only question is, are you willing to learn them and finally stop sweeping the things under the rug and taking responsibility for your life? Is your life perfect? Are you completely satisfied with your life? Most people would say no, because they are waiting for something to happen. They are waiting for the outbreak and the pandemic to end. They are waiting to get a girlfriend or a boyfriend. They are waiting to get rich. They are waiting to finish college or find their dream career, or whatever. You were conditioned to think that these things make you happy. But true satisfaction and true happiness doesn't come from the outside world, it comes from within. And of course, when the situation comes that shows up to the ego that it doesn't have all it wants, because the ego will never be satisfied. There's always more to get, more to achieve. Then you suffer. You suffer because the outside world will never be perfect for the ego. There will always be something bad. So stop listening to the ego. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss other videos. And you can like the video to help the channel out. That's all for now, and see you in the next one. Bye.